I'm Chris Luzniak,
And I'm Rob Byer,
and this is the Debate Math Podcast,
the show where we redefine what it means to debate in mathematics and education.
where multiple sides of ideas are explored, evidence matters, and we all grow and learn from hearing each other.
Because the world and our classrooms are not binary.
So let's dig into this month's debate. Artificial intelligence. It's exploded onto the scene with promises of personalized learning, instant feedback, and round-the-clock tutoring.
Some teachers say it's transforming how students engage with mathematics. Others worry it's turning problem solving into copy and paste, eroding reasoning, and creating a generation of students who can get answers but can't explain them.
So today we're exploring whether AI is a powerful tool that enhances learning or just another hindrance for teachers and students. As we explore the question, is AI helpful in math education?
First up, we have a returning guest, an educator, an education consultant for math, ed tech, AI, and STEAM, an entrepreneur, a speaker, a traveler, and founder of the nonprofit Campo Creativo. Not to mention, he's a great debater who, in his spare time, enjoys putting on some John Coltrane and creating a charcuterie board for his friends and family. It's Ed Campos. Ed, welcome back, my man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be back. Welcome back. I did forget to say that I got to put the black gloves on before the charcuterie. That's when you feel the full fanciness. I enjoy to feel fancy. Everybody deserves to feel fancy and create charcuterie for their loved ones.
Freaking love it. Ed, could you remind our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
So my name is Ed Campos. I'm currently a consultant in the Central Valley of California. I live in a town called Tulare, in between Bakersfield and Fresno, if that helps. I am, right now, my position is I am self-employed. I have a education consulting company, Ed Campos Jr. Consulting, helping districts out with math mainly, but some AI recently, STEAM, after-school program. I get to work with a lot of artists. That also connects with my community work because I have a nonprofit. I'm a director of a somewhat newly formed nonprofit the last couple of years, Campo Creativo. And it's about really just encouraging more creativity in the community. We give out creativity grants to teachers and students that apply for them. We partner with local businesses to creatively contribute to the economy. We host creative gatherings, math nights, STEAM nights, art nights, music nights, things like that. So charcuterie nights. We actually did a charcuterie family night. It was one of the coolest things ever. Families creating charcuterie together with elementary school kids and their families, and had a photo booth and everything. So I like to dabble in a lot of things.
Look, all of a sudden I'm hungry. So, you're no stranger to this. When did math first become controversial to you?
Well, it became controversial to me. I think I'm going to use the same example I did last time because I thought I was good at math up until a certain point, but I was really just good at the game of school and test taking. And when it became controversial was when started learning about visual patterns, Von Wynn, and then Joe Bowler. I saw Joe Bowler doing that, and I didn't really understand that. I didn't really understand how that was algebra, and because that was not the algebra I was taught, and so it became controversial internally for me because that someone who's always been told with a fixed mindset, you're smart, you're a math person, now didn't see this the right way. So I definitely lived that story and that example of, the one who shies away from the challenges. And I didn't want to be around something I didn't like. Until then, I sat with it and then really just opened up. I started to see colors, like that movie Pleasantville or whatever with Tobey Maguire back in the day when you just like everything went from black and white to colors. And I saw the beauty of this thing that I have a math degree in, but I was taking the math in black and white, and everything just opened up and stuff started flowering. So it was controversial, but in a good way because it forced some internal struggle. But now there's a lot of awakening and excitement about. I'm okay with not knowing a lot of stuff, and I'm excited about learning and curious about learning different ways of seeing things.
Well, welcome back.
And next up is a long time math educator coming to us from Canada. He's vice president of the Ontario Association for Mathematics Education. Early in his career, he co-designed what became Microsoft's OneNote class notebook, and more recently, he's led the development of Chat OAME, a AI service focused on the unique needs of Ontario math teachers. He spent over 2 decades blending classroom teaching with research and professional learning, which helps explain why he once described himself as three-quarters math teacher and three-quarters technology integrator. When he isn't talking about math or AI, he serves as an auxiliary constable with the Halton Regional Police, so he takes both data privacy and hallway duty unusually seriously. It's Cal Armstrong. Hi, Cal.
Good evening.
Glad to have you here. Can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
I'm currently just outside of Toronto, Canada, and I'm a classroom teacher. I've got a set of Algebra 1s, two Algebra 2s, and a calculus. Oh, sorry, two calculus.
Oh my gosh, busy. And the question we ask all our guests, when did math first become controversial to you?
So I'm old, and so for me it was in the early '90s when I began teaching, and I'd gone through the Ontario training schools, and then I went out on my own, and I got onto what then was called Gopher, the predecessor of the internet, and I ran into the math forum at Swarthmore, and I suddenly realized that what I'd been trained in, just create a really good activity and talk about it really, really well, and the kids will get it, no problem, wasn't actually the best way to do things. And so the math forum opened up a whole bunch of conversation, a whole bunch of opportunities, and has really, changed my education process for the better.
Very good. Shout out to the Math Forum.
Our next guest is a high school teacher who did undergrad research focused on AI sensor networks for smart homes. He was a recipient of an NSF graduate K-12 teaching fellowship. He was also a team member in the DARPA Robotics Challenge while earning a PhD in robotics lab at RPI. He has reached the finals of two, not one, two NASA robotics challenges, building AI systems for semi and fully autonomous robots to support missions to the moon and Mars, which he leveraged in his classroom, giving students opportunities to get involved with state-of-the-art research. He's also the recipient of the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. It's Jed Williams. Jed.
Hi, everybody.
Jed, can you tell our listeners where you are and what your current role is?
Oh, yeah. I am just outside of Boston, career-long classroom teacher. Right now, I'm teaching physics and data science. I switch off a lot. I taught AP Calc for a long, long time, pre-calc. Everything except AP statistics, actually. Every math except AP stats I taught. And sometimes I'll do a robotics or a computer science.
And Jed, now the question we ask everybody, when did math first become controversial to you?
Yeah. Oh man, did I think about it? And I have like a million thoughts and no thoughts at all. I know it's like that question. But I think really as an educator, I spent a lot of time just siloed in my room like we all do. I didn't even know about NCTM for like my first 6 years as a math teacher, that kind of thing. But once getting out into the world and talking to other math teachers, it became clear that a lot of people have a very specific perspective on what math is, and they hold on to it really tightly. And to me, it's so strange because after college, I realized like, oh, the math I learned in high school is really just preparation for engineers. Like that's my perspective of it. Like the math we learn in high school is really just prepping engineers. It's so different than I think the mathematics that mathematicians do, and it leaves a whole lot of math untaught. And yeah, just I think when I started hearing other people talk about what they think math is, I realized how different that is from my view of it.
Thank you, and welcome to our very talented guests. With that, let's get into our debate. We begin with opening statements from each of our speakers. You each have 2 minutes to present your arguments. And we're going to start with Ed here, tackling the question, is AI helpful in math education? Ed, you're up first, and your time begins now.
So yes, I'm going to say AI is helpful, but there's different areas, different lanes that it is helpful, and I think it can be harmful. So first, I think it's helpful in that teacher educator burnout is a real thing, and there's a lot of menial, trivial tasks that a teacher doesn't want to spend time with, like structuring emails, things like that, with lesson planning to submit for paperwork, that type of thing. I think AI is super helpful, especially when you learn and like you can use it on your phone and use voice dictation, which I do a lot, or advanced voice to just save tons of time getting stuff structured and getting that paperwork stuff out of the way. Then I think it's really helpful because if it can save time to because you reclaim some time, and I think what you do with that time is the helpfulness that you can have more connection with your students to get to know them on a personal level, and then help design amazing math practice filled, joy filled spaces that are filled with things they like Takis chips and anime, and things I like charcuterie. And we could have amazing assets based math experiences that are engaging, equitable. I'm gonna go a little interesting. The jury's still out on bots, math bots like Conmigo and Snorkel, which I've been experimenting with. But I do think there's use for them because the hope I've seen with my own language tutor, my Spanish tutor, and how that's helped me out. But I think it's a version of the math language routine, stronger and clearer each time, where you first prompt the human before the bot, and then you have students engage with experts, which is them, because they're experts in their own thinking, or the teacher. So I think that's that's my story. That's what I was going to say. That's kind of my caveat of bringing chatbots into the math classroom.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Ed. And next, we're going to hear from Cal. And his take on the question, is AI helpful in math education? Cal, you have 2 minutes. Your time begins now.
So my answer is yes, and also no. So when people tell me very confidently that with generative AI, things are going to be different, I look back at all the other things that have happened, the internet, social media, and what happened from the MT boss to what is whatever X is now. I don't want AI talking to my students first. I want it talking to me first. I want it as a planning partner. I want it as an electronic Vygotsky. I want it as a reflective mirror that can analyze my lessons, that can give me feedback as a critical friend. I want it in a protected, closed environment, district or school controlled, that doesn't end up with student data being used for advertising and product training. But if we then flip the coin, when we move from teachers using AI to students using AI, I then shift to a no. Most students do not learn mathematics deeply by reading about it and listening to some slick explanation. They need to work and struggle with the mathematics. They need to draw. They need to sketch. They need to argue with another student. They need to argue with me. Their brains change when they decide which representations to use, which step comes next, where they got stuck, what we often call productive struggle. A general purpose AI chatbot is an anti-productive struggle machine. It short circuits their hard thinking and makes it seductively easy to outsource their entire cognitive process. And then there's a data issue. When students use corporate AI tools, they're not just asking math questions, they're bringing in their entire life. From that, we can build digital twins of learners, detailed models of how individual students think and behave, and then that can be used to simulate, predict, and experiment on that kid at scale. That's not science fiction, that's happening now. We need to make sure that student data is protected, and that only way to do that is to remove corporate AI from classrooms.
Wow, right at the buzzer. 2 minutes perfect. All right, thank you. And lastly, we'll hear from Jed. Jed, your 2 minutes begins now.
Okay, so we have a professional responsibility as educators to vet technology we bring into the classroom, and unfortunately, that's largely not happening. Instead, we have math education leadership promoting harmful, even illegal practices. We have conferences that accept AI hype and reject critical perspectives. We have tech companies pushing products onto admin over the summer who then parrot the sales pitch at the first faculty meeting of the year, or companies who tunnel their AI products through platforms already established within schools, making it difficult to opt out. Forcing products and then claiming that the use of that product is evidence of something. What we have is a largely uncritical adoption of AI in education. And some worry about the worsening environmental impact and energy consumption, so enormous that major corporations abandoned carbon commitments. Some worry about the demonstrated biases of AI against women, people of color, non-native English speakers, the neurodivergent, non-hegemonic cultures in general. But some worry about the concentration of power into the hands of a few, granting surveillance and control of information and those that will just get abused. Some worry about the effects of anthropomorphizing AI, which is intentionally built in to exploit human psychology, or exposing young people to this tech at a time of critical cognitive and social development and the damaging psychological effects. Others worry about cheating and the erosion of academic integrity facilitated by technologies built on data theft. Some worry about the intensely dehumanizing nature of AI and corporate practices from ignoring the humans behind the scenes doing so much of the labor to make AI appear functional, to school districts promoting making AI avatars of real teachers. Teachers who, by the way, have been co-opted into unpaid labor for the benefit of corporations by finding uses for their non-products. That is, tech that has been thrown at us with no clear application, while at the same time being called revolutionary. So I feel that we are being reckless with the privacy, education, health, and futures of our students.
Okay, wow. All three of you came out with strong opinions there. So I hear a little bit, at least from like Cal and Ed, that maybe there's some use for teachers to use with some help to like reduce some, I don't know, paperwork, free up time, like Ed was you were talking about. But I don't see any of the three of you thinking that it's helpful for students. And I know some teachers are talking about like ways they want to incorporate AI in the classroom. So how do you all feel specifically about students? Like, should students be able to use AI at some point in the math classroom? Always, sometimes, never, maybe? And what does it look like to you for students? And maybe we'll go back to Ed for a second to start us off.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Calvin on that. I mean, I think this is the jury's out for me, but I read the AI guidance from NCSM and from some other organizations, and there's rubrics. But I mean, we're just finding out what social media and ed tech companies have done to teenage brains, and with the anxiety generation, the anxious generation, with that book, and I think it's way too early to be plugging in chatbots to kids. I think there's a huge problem. I've seen great technology be put into the classroom before a teacher can learn how to design well with ed tech, and it quiets the classroom, and it's cognitive offloading, it's instructional outsourcing. Like, that's on top of the privacy concerns. So I don't advocate for it. I mainly advocate for teacher use for sure. However, districts are going to make those decisions, so I try and point them in the direction of like the AI guidance from NCSM, and to look at rubrics to vet these tools, to have good conversations, because it's not my district, but and people have to be aware that there's a lot of money being thrown around with these products and pushed into schools, so to be aware of that. I do think, like, I've tested a couple, none of them have been really impressive. The only one that is kind of interesting is Snorkel. Snorkel has like just a lot of different ways to draw and things like that. And I do think if it's used at all, kind of like Desmos, right, with any technology, it's not just a plug and play. It's you're designing so that the child is doing the reasoning, the child is developing more agency, and it's designed sandwiched in between something, giving them not necessarily lockstep in being a math tutor. This is how you solve the problem, opening up their thinking. Just like in a Desmos activity, I can see all the beautiful reasoning and thinking. And I mean, one thing chatbots are not good at is they haven't been good at math. I know the specialized versions like Conmigo and Snorkel are getting better at it. And there's a Wolfram Alpha one that I haven't messed with, but But what it is good is at language, and like having my own AI language tutor and like improve my Spanish remarkably. I see the potential for that because having a kid engage in their own language talking about something is something that a classroom teacher cannot do eventually. So I see some potential, but I don't really advocate for it as of now. But as an adult, I see huge benefit in the language development, which kids need access to to that,
Yeah.
and it can be helpful for them there.
Yeah, let me go to Cal and Jed because you both talked. You teach high school, like the upper level stuff here, calculus and beyond. My husband is in a PhD math program and uses ChatGPT all the time to like talk with someone about some high level mathematics stuff. So, is there some ways you could see this being used in some student work and in certain classes or something?
So I think a gentleman from Vanderbilt, whose name escapes me right now, said that effective use of AI requires initial expertise, which is not something students bring into the equation. They're literally the novice. When I use it, I certainly have bias of my own. I certainly have things I do not know, but I do have a critical mind. I approach it with caution, and I have a background in both mathematics and mathematics education, so I can interact with the responses and see what the challenges might be. Students don't have that in either mathematics or how they learn. They experience it, they don't necessarily reflect on it and understand it. Um, I would also add that it's somewhat humorous to me that I can barely get the students to read the entire problem, and now they want me to make them read the responses of a chatbot that never shuts up. So I find that both irritating and thought provoking.
Fair point. And Jed, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I I mean, something that I see over and over again, and I talk to teachers about is um, large language models are fundamentally the wrong model for so many of the applications that we're throwing them at. Um, I mean, Ed, you mentioned Wolfram Alpha. Like Wolfram Alpha is a computation engine, right? It was built to do math and will, for example, give you either no response or some meaningful response if it's something that isn't programmed into the system to do, or if you have like an ill-defined problem or something. Large language models are not computation engines. Like they're not built to do mathematics, and we shouldn't treat them like that. I'm aware of lots of people who have experimented with doing math with chatbots. And I mean, Chris, like you mentioned, your husband's experience, like using this to work through math problems. And for sure, the capabilities of these systems has improved. They used to be not even that long ago complete garbage. Like my students would talk about how great these systems are, and then I would give them very simple problems that would just break. You know, you'd get completely wrong answers. Or we would do the experiment where, okay, everybody open up ChatGPT. I'm going to give you all the same problem. Let's count how many different answers we get to that problem, right? And it's just really important for anyone who's using a computer to do mathematics to understand not details about how like the architecture of these AI systems work necessarily, but just understand they are not computation engines, and we really shouldn't treat them like that. And it does highlight one more thing, and this seems kind of a tangent, but it's like my thing I love to talk about, which is we don't teach computing in mathematics. And I've heard it suggested that we should teach like essentially ChatGPT in the math classroom, and that skips a whole lot of steps. Like there's so much computing we could be teaching in our math classes. But again, back to what I said at the start, that's one of those things that a lot of people consider not math, right? Computing is viewed really as outside of mathematics, which is wild if you know about the history of computing and mathematics.
Okay, so I'm getting the sense that all of you are pretty much anti-students using this, at least much, right? Like maybe a little bits here and there. But I just want to follow up with a kind of a more of a pushback. Like I hear parents and teachers saying, well, it's in the world. It exists, just like calculators exist. Like we have to train the students, get them ready for this future world, and they're gonna do their math or maybe their taxes on ChatGPT someday, right? Like when they're grown up. So are we are we setting them back if we don't expose them to the tools that are going to be there when they grow up as adults? And maybe I'll come back to you, Jed, to start us off. Like, are we just ignoring the thing they're going to have in the future?
No, nobody should be doing their taxes with ChatGPT. Again, I mean, this is an example of this is not what these systems were built to do. If we want to have students working with some sort of interactive technology, some computer-based AI, whatever we call it, there are far better systems that we could create to do that. The argument about it exists seems pretty weak. Lots of things exist. Like, people talk about how they're going to need this for their jobs in the future. Okay, why should I teach it in my math classroom? I just don't understand the jump in reasoning. It seems completely non sequitur. But even if that were true, which I don't believe it is true, that like everyone will use this for all their jobs, right? Like we can think of 100 jobs right now that nobody's ever going to use a chatbot for. Even if that were true, let them get on the job training. Why are we the ones responsible for doing the like occupational training for these students? Do I want my students to be prepared? Yes, but to the extent that the subject I'm teaching them, right, is important. I don't know why I would have to drag a technology unless somebody has a good reason for it.
Let me bring in Cal or Ed if either of you want to weigh in. Like, are we not preparing students for the future if we say you can't use ChatGPT or any AI?
Well, I think that's presumptuous because we don't know what the future is. So if we're preparing them for if using generative AI at its current state, then they're out of date next week. So I'd much rather have them spend their time, developing the critical skills, developing the problem-solving skills, understanding how to form an argument, independent of something telling them what the answer is, so that when they do get out in the real world, they'll have built-in analytical skills that they can deal with any problem they encounter with or without an AI assistant running next to them.
And I think even if they're not using ChatGPT in the class, I'm going to teach as if that exists in the world because it's going to come up, right? And it has come up. And I do think modeling good use of it and not anthropomorphizing anything, modeling, because there's not related to math, but anytime you're dealing with a chatbot, there's huge dangers when it comes to like relational AI and AI companions with kids and the mental health issues. I just was at an event where a Stanford professor was talking about a lot of the issues. The stuff is really concerning, especially with how much mental health issues there are right now and the amount of isolation some of our students have already on their devices. So that's super problematic. So I think AI literacy and awareness needs to be, that's all of our jobs right now, and AI modeling, responsible use. I used to call my ChatGPT Guillermo Porfirio Torres because I like to have wordplay because GPT, or Arturo Iniguez because nobody's out working a Mexican except for a language model that doesn't that's available 24/7. But I don't do that anymore. I mean, as funny as the wordplay is, I'm not going to anthropomorphize it. It's just a auto predicting text on steroids, and I think they are going to use it. We just need to make them aware of it and give them the answers. Like, who cares about the answer? Convince me, explain it to me, give me the reasoning, learn how to speak publicly. And I'm telling kids this all the time. If you don't learn how to speak confidently, you're going to be useless. Like, get some skills. Let's think, use this brain. You know what I mean? Don't let the AI do all the thinking and the reasoning. Give them the answers right away and then like prove it to me and convince me.
So we've been talking a lot about like student usage in classrooms and how I think all of us are kind of agreeing like in math class as of right now, like they probably shouldn't be using it all that much, right? Because like the chat bots and like what Ed said. But Jed, I want to come to you because what you said in your opening statement kind of really resonated with me, and I think it's something that's often missed in this conversation. From conferences, you talked about conferences where they talk all about all the great things that AI could do for us, but they never talk about some of the challenges or concerns. What are some of those? I just kind of touched on it, and Calvin had kind of come to you too, so that way we get all three points of view. But like, what are some things like schools and teachers, building leaders, district leaders? What should we be thinking about with this AI from a data standpoint, from a relational standpoint? Like, what are some concerns that are oftentimes suppressed that we should probably bring to light?
Yeah, so the list is long. So I'm gonna I'm gonna try to give a couple. I mean, one of the biggest things is AI often does not work. There are many instances when it does, and that's great. But I'm going to read this quote from a book that's available online for free called Fairness in Machine Learning. The quote is this. I talk about this every time I speak. Our success, happiness, and well-being are never fully of our own making. Others' decisions can profoundly affect the course of our lives. Arbitrary, inconsistent, or faulty decision-making thus raises serious concerns. What this is getting at is that we have AI systems out in the world that are being used to parse resumes, right? To decide who gets hired or fired, like who gets to post bail, or who's going to get released from prison. And there are just so many examples of AI systems being put into these situations where I don't want to use the word like making decisions, right? Because it's a human who put a machine there that's going to give some output, and then we're following the output of that machine. But a lot of these systems are broken, and we're putting our students out into an environment where those who know how to game the system have an advantage in terms of making it through these like exploitable broken systems. Cal mentioned the data, right? To me, one of the biggest pieces is privacy. And we've just been slowly integrating more and more technology into our school systems that really puts an amount of trust into these tech companies that they do not deserve. There's an excellent, I want to go back to this broken AI, because again, AI is broken. Everywhere you look, like not just bias, but just broken systems being deployed out into the world. There used to be this concept, this notion of like an actual finished product versus proof of concept, right? A proof of concept was just an idea that maybe we could develop this into a product. But these days, what companies are doing is putting the proof of concept out as a deployed product, right? Even when it doesn't work, which is why you get just wild things, right? From what used to be reliable search, right? Google, the name that used to be synonymous with fact checking. Now, last year we saw the examples where if you had cheese that wouldn't stay on your pizza, it advised you to use super glue, right, to get it back on. Can you use like gasoline with your pasta sauce, right? All like wild things. And of course, the really like dark, horrible responses that it would get anytime you search for anything mental health related. The list is long. I mean, there's environmental concerns, right? People are paying nearly 3 times as much for power just because a data center decided to get built, somewhere near them that they had no control over. People are facing the health consequences of living near those data centers. And like, guess where those data centers are, right? In communities that are historically marginalized. There's so little talk about the consequences of these things, the deep harm that we're doing to our information ecosystem, where AI generated papers are getting put out and they have fake citations. You used to be able to at least try to search those citations, but now there's so much pollution in the information ecosystem that it's difficult to even fact check things anymore because the fake citations now have presence on the internet. Yeah, I could go on and on and on. It's just a real mess, right? And any notion that we want to get this into school systems, I don't know what you're talking about.
So, and Cal, I'm going to come to you because I think back because you mentioned earlier about how you were teaching in the '90s, and well, so like going from the '90s going into the 2000s as like the internet started to come out, and I remember now I'm a little bit younger, so I remember being taught how to like navigate what this is, but also like giving us an idea of how to protect ourselves. Like, is that something that we should be thinking about in terms of AI? And if so, like I think Ed mentioned it earlier, like actually I think you had mentioned it. Like by the time we train a kid, next week it's changed. Like how do we set as a school system? How do we set that up to where our students are not just throwing all of their information on a generative AI and hoping for the best? And how can we help protect them?
It's just, yeah, why give me the question that I can't answer there? And it's a problem that extends far beyond the math classroom, and I don't know, I really don't know how to deal with it. The terror I have of young people being given a sycophantic yes machine that will agree with all of their, dark explorations of being a teenager. It's a biologically, chemically disruptive time in their lives, and now you just have something that's not going to give them the boundaries that their parents, that their teachers, that the culture generally gives them. Instead, they're at 3 a.m. being told that whatever they're thinking is exactly the right thing they should be thinking, and it's entirely supported by good research, and you should go do it. And that's not what a teenager whose brain is still on the verge of reaching complete development needs in any way, shape, or form. And we, as educators and mathematics educators, we don't have that control into the student home or the student life. And I don't know that we have a training program capable of instructing parents on how to give their children that kind of guidance.
And I appreciate that. Reason I wanted to ask that question, not to put you on the spot, Cal, is because I truly, it's what we hear. We hear a lot of people who are claiming to be experts in AI and education, AI and math education, but I don't know what that even means anymore, right? Like
Well, it means they
I
want to
don't
make money. I mean, that's really what it means.
that yeah, that's 100%. And like I think what it means to me is like they're more expert than what we are and not the expert because they played with it a little bit further, right? So then I guess what we've been talking a lot about like all these concerns and there's so many and Jed, if you have like some research and things that we can put in the show notes, like please share that with us and we'll share that out for everybody who's listening. But Cal, I'm going to come back to you with a little bit like shift in our mindset here. So we've talked about all these ways that like it possibly could be integrated. We also talked about all the issues that we could have, right? My question now is like, okay, so how could it be helpful? We're shift away from the student idea. How can teachers utilize generative AI or AI to be helpful?
Certainly use my own case in the sense that I've used it to work on problem situations that would have taken a much longer time if I'd had to sit there with a calculating device and a whole sheet of problems trying to work it out myself and having the AI there working through generating the situations, me checking, me giving it suggestions on how to incorporate student interest, incorporate up-to-date technologies, up-to-date situations that, let's face it, I'm not aware of half the time. So it really helps the culture and environment within my classroom because the questions and activities reflect the student interest and curiosity. Um, I could have done that, just not anywhere near as fast or as often. And large language models, because they're based on language, certainly help that. It helps me, and again, exactly as when I first began, it's the coach I didn't have. When I first started teaching, I was the only math teacher in the school. I had no one. First year teacher, no feedback. I was on my own. Thank God for Gopher telling me, put up your game up there, Armstrong. But now I've got something I can drop the phone on the table. I can have it record my lesson. I can throw it into ChatGPT, Chat OME, and ask it, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? How did I deal with the questions? How can I improve my answers? And someone's giving me feedback, giving me that assessment. I mean, assessment literally means to sit beside, and now the chat bots are sitting beside me, giving me feedback, a critical friend. I can't ask my colleagues to be in my room 24/7. I can have the chat service there saying, "Hey, here's some feedback that you might have not noticed. You should be aware of."
Love that. Ed, what about you? Other than charcuterie board recipes, how else can it be helpful for teachers, even for admin?
I first wanted to share just some good resources before I tackle that one. Just AI literacy resources, Common Sense Media. I share these a lot. Great AI resources, AI literacy resources for families, for students in English and Spanish, for teachers and admin. And also AI EDU has great snapshot resources, quick discussions anybody could and should have in the classroom. Not we bringing chatbots in, but bringing the conversations in, because kids need to understand this. I do think it needs to be the new "This is your brain on drugs" campaign to raise awareness. All right, that stuck. We need something as sticky like that. But I do think there's a lot of the reasons Calvin talked about. There's a lot of burnout. Teachers can design, ideate, traverse through research. No teacher's looking at the math framework. The California math framework is a beast. But you put it into Notebook LM, and Notebook LM is a great research tool to make sense of the math framework. As a math coach, I either create a Notebook LM or a custom GPT around numberless word problems or math language routines. And instead of leaving my teachers that I'm coaching or doing professional development with a giant binder, which they're never going to open, it's a custom GPT that's trained on some public information, not copyrighted data, but trained and given directions on how to behave and how to guide them to using those math language routines, incorporating numberless word problems or 3 reads or things like that. I think that saves a lot of time. Thin slicing for if you're doing building thinking classrooms, like a lot of teachers that are using thinking classrooms, like I love it for thin slicing. A lot of teachers don't have good curriculum, and it sucks. And there's textbook adoption going on in California. So I think AI just helps you. Take a picture of your word problems, help me, scaffold this, make this more interesting, give me some open questions for teachers who are not super versed in asking, focusing questions as opposed to funneling. Like give me some good questions to ask during this rich task. That's a huge shift pedagogically to go from direct instruction to rich open tasks. So I don't know. I think there's just a lot of benefit when you can model it and show it right, and then, kind of like what Calvin said, like bring their interests in, make it about Minecraft, create a theme for your classroom, connect it to their culture, but also have a critical friend to be like, is this super offensive? Because I've asked it to create some stuff and I'm like, whoa, as a Mexican, that's like super offensive. Like tone it down there, GPT, you know what I mean? And, but that's what it comes with the expert, right? Guided by the expert, like having a critical friend to be like, hey, I had created a STEAM lesson based off of the Zodiac, and I was gonna deliver the STEAM lesson. I'm like, man, maybe I should ask my someone who's Chinese about this before I go and like step into something, So I call my friend Jenny, and she was like, well, walk me through what you did, and then we talked it through. She goes, no, I think that's good, and then she did the project with her son, and it ended up being, but that's like, we can't just fully blindly trust that. We use it to ideate, and then you got to be that human in the loop to bring it back and vet. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this lesson? Is this good? Is this worthwhile? Or is it just better to like ignore it and then do it yourself? Because sometimes you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
And Jed, is there anything that we're missing on how it could be helpful?
Yeah, sure. When 2007, I think, when I was teaching, I think Algebra 1 in physics at the time, I wrote a small AI program to give students problems and then sort of analyze their progress and then find where they needed some work. Something super simple. That type of thing I could see being helpful, but this is one of those areas where I mentioned, like, teachers are getting co-opted into doing unpaid labor, trying to figure out how to use these tools. There aren't a lot of finished products, right, being delivered to teachers that are AI. Or when we were just down at NCTM Atlanta, AI was everywhere. One of the things I did was I went down to the floor, and like where everyone wants to scan your badge, And I was checking out what are the AI products now, right? Because it's so different from even a year ago. As far as I can tell, AI is just a marketing term at this point. Because when I would talk to the folks, the presenters there, right, they get those super attractive people to stand out in front of like whatever cardboard cutout and talk to you, right? When I would ask, almost always AI was just an interface between the user and the real product. AI wasn't actually generating, for example, curriculum. They had expert curriculum designers who were designing curriculum, and then there was some AI interface that was really literally just like a search through their expert design curriculum. So a lot of the time when there are areas where it seems like AI might be helpful, it's not really AI that's being helpful. It's human beings behind the scenes. Another thing is that this really highlights not how useful AI is, but how broken, right, the new teacher environment is. My first year teaching, I showed up and they handed me the textbook, and that was what I got, right? I didn't get a full curriculum. I didn't get someone really to help me with that curriculum. They just handed me the textbook. We need to better support new teachers and support teachers in general. I think that when we look at AI as this sort of like band-aid for some of these problems, my question is like, okay, it's helpful, but at what cost, right? How many billions and billions of dollars did we put into building these mostly often broken systems that might be helpful for some things when we could have just like paid teachers more? Right? It's often a band-aid to a broken system, and often that band-aid doesn't even work. But I did want to ask a couple clarifying questions, because Ed, you had mentioned you built a custom LLM. Was that based on like you most of the custom LLMs you can make, you like take something that's pre-trained and you modify it with like a preamble? Do you know what system you use to build it?
I mean, I've done it in Chat GPT, like before with the framework or with public facing documents that are like about the math language routines with strategies or public
Got it.
articles. I've also done it with Gemini, Gems, and then now kind of like a Notebook LM is a version of that.
Okay. Because I just wanted to point out, you said it was trained on like public facing, not copyrighted documents, but that's only once it's gotten to you, right? The pre-trained model very likely was trained on copyrighted material. And then you were just like, oh, I'm just saying. And then Cal, I had one for you too. You said, did you did you say you would record lessons and then submit it to Chat GPT?
Record lessons and submit it to Chat OAME, so it's a private and secure space, so it's not going into the general Chat GPT data collection. Yes.
But it's through the Chat GPT API, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And it was like a recording of the lesson that you gave?
Yeah, so the recording gets changed into a transcript. The transcript removes all the student names, and then it analyzes the
Love
text
it.
of that.
Yeah. Okay, that's so important. And because this brings up an important point, which is that when everything AI started coming out, especially leadership in various fields felt obligated to like make statements about it or give guidance on it. And that was one that the former NCTM president, in a letter, the very first letter that NCTM shared on AI, I want to read just a sentence from this, because it said, having the potential to turn an app on, perhaps even without the students knowing it, and then having it collect data is powerful. And he suggested to teachers that they record students, surveil students without their consent, and then share that data with a third-party app. And to me, that's wild that this was the first AI statement from NCTM, that it's still up there, and that nobody has sued them yet. Because in many states, that is illegal, right? and even if it weren't illegal, that's clearly unethical. To be secretly surveilling students and then sharing that data with third-party apps. And for this, to come from the sitting president of NCTM in their first statement on AI as a recommendation for like how AI could be used is wild. And it's something that I talk about every time I present is like that this happened. That kind of thing just happened over and over again. The first presentations you saw about AI, everyone was like, Ed, you mentioned like generating a lesson on Zodiac and then checking. The very first talk I saw on AI, which was at an NCTM, recommended to teachers that they use ChatGPT to build culturally situated lesson plans for cultures that they are not familiar with as a way to connect with students, right? But especially at that time in like 22, 23, it was the biases were even less guardrailed than they are now. You're just asking for trouble. Stuff like that just blows my mind. That if you know anything about AI ethics and like the data ethics that Cal has talked about, it just blows my mind that people are out there like giving presentations to hundreds of people and telling them to do these things that are to me so clearly unethical.
Okay, we've covered so much, and we could go on in so many directions with all the stuff about the issues with AI and students and teachers use and stuff. I kind of want to wrap up our question around here with just one last question for you all. So, if you had lots of power and influence in schools in your district, let's say, right? Thinking about this, what you bring up, Jed, about the ethics of it all, and I just think about like some schools ban cell phones, and to be able to drive a car, you have to be of a certain age and get a license, like all these things. Like what guardrails, what rules would you put in place? What would you want to see AI look like for both students and teachers in ideally in a school district?
I think it has to be it would have to be in phases, like there, and the second phase, if there's ever AI chatbots, is way far down the line. Phase one would be equipping teachers with AI literacy, what AI is, how to use it to save time, how to reduce educator burnout, just for to improve systems overall with adults using AI. I think that's the phase one. That's a very long phase one. And then eventually, if a district purchases an enterprise version, which is more safe, more self-contained, keeping students' data private, then eventually down the line, seeing what that might look like with AI in some capacity with student use. I do think, uh, it's got to take experts. There has to be the expert, the human in the loop for these to ever be super useful in a math class or things like that. Like there's advancements in medicine, and but those come with partnerships and working alongside doctors and experts. And there needs to be the same partnerships and experts in education working alongside with some of these companies.
So I guess maybe I'm just a curmudgeon now. I'm going to say there should be no AI chatbot use in mathematics classrooms, um, particularly now in their current state of large language models. When we look at tools like Desmos, when we look at Delta Math, these are all tools that are very carefully curated by mathematics educators and presented in very precise ways with thoughtful explanation, with deliberate design choices. Meanwhile, the chatbot is literally probabilistic. It's randomly going to give you something, and you have no control over the presentation, the diagramming, the schematic, nothing. You roll your dice, you take your chances. And that's not how a good teacher runs the classroom. The classroom is a well-structured environment where the kids are random, but you're always the center of calm. You're always got the design protocols. You've already got the plan in place, and then roll with the punches, of course. But yeah, there's no until we get a chat environment that's mathematically based, that is educationally based, that is private within the school environment. So basically, we're not looking at the structures we have right now because large language models, whatever Wolfram Alpha might manage to come up with, maybe. But we don't have an environment that is safe or mathematically productive yet.
And Jed, I'm sure you're similar sentiments there, but I'm thinking about like I just heard of the news that Australia banned social media for kids under 16 this week. I think it
Right,
went into
yeah.
effect. Yeah. So like, are there rules, guidelines you would just or just cut it out completely for students?
I think, the very first thing I said, which is like we have a professional obligation to vet the tech that we bring into our classroom. And I think it's as simple as that, to do a good job of vetting that tech. And to understand too that when somebody shows up to sell you a product, right, it's not our job as the teacher to like figure out how to use that product. It's not our job to justify like using the product. Like, let them sell you the product. If there's a good application and it appears to work, spend some money on it. But the problem is definitely that we're jumping into AI almost largely uncritically. Um, and that's just so apparent. I've given lots of examples. The last one I'll give is like one of the more recent AIPD that I went to. The presenter was talking about handing off student data to chatbots, and I asked them if they were concerned at all about violating federal laws about protecting the privacy of students. And their response was, people do illegal things all the time. That's where we're at, I think, with AI right now. That if I couldn't sum it up any better than that.
Okay, I think that concludes our questioning round.
Hi, listeners. Before we get into final arguments, we want to pause and have you ponder for a moment. What did the guest just say? And what stood out for you?
Whatever is on your mind, we want to hear it.
Did you know you could text us your thoughts?
Just head to the show notes for this episode and look for the text us link. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
And with that, let's hear our closing statement.
We will now end by giving each side 2 minutes to make their final arguments to you.
And we're going to begin with Ed Campos. Ed, take it away.
So my stance on AI is, I think, in a lot of agreement of some of our friends here, is that, or I think, teacher use, adult use with our adult brains that have years under our life, learn how to leverage these large language models to save ourselves some time, create some more time for connections and creativity. And I don't think that chatbots are ready to be in the classroom, but I do think AI literacy and awareness need to be brought into the classroom, and not just other non-math classes. I think math classes deserve to talk about AI literacy to raise awareness, because students are using it, and whether it's approved by the district or not, they're using the stuff on their devices. So I think that there's a lot of potential for creative connections, creative lesson design, and saving teachers time. The student use with the chatbot, I have yet to see until there's an expert. Maybe if Desmos weaves some AI strategically into it, because Desmos is one of the best technologies out there. But I know Dan Meyer goes hard against AI, but I have heard, I think, that Desmos is working on some AI stuff. So I don't know. That's my stance for right now. Teacher use to free up some time for connections and creativity.
Great. And then next up, we'll hear from Cal. The floor is yours.
Thanks. So for me, open corporate AI tools in the hands of kids with their data flowing God knows where are not helpful in any kind of educational sense. In fact, they're bordering on pedagogical malpractice. They're convenient, they're impressive, they make awesome cat videos, but they're not aligned with how we know students learn mathematics best, nor with how we should be treating kids' data. So yes, AI belongs in mathematics education, but first and foremost as a tool for teachers, used intentionally for planning, feedback, and reflection inside strongly protected closed systems that put learners' rights ahead of corporate interests. But no, AI should not be the main way students do mathematics. Students need friction, they need challenge, and direct interaction with mathematical ideas, not an endless stream of instant answers and endless digital flattery.
Thanks, Cal. And lastly, we will hear from Jed. Jed, you got the final word. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically I agree with Cal about most stuff. I would say that the big thing is when people started talking about AI literacy, I got so pumped because I love AI. That's why I spent years of my life studying it. I thought what they meant was that we were going to start updating mathematics standards to reflect modern mathematics, and that we would start teaching things like computing for mathematics, dynamical systems, discrete math, right? Graph theory, set theory. I thought we were going to go back to maybe teaching something that is relevant to AI. I didn't know that I would show up in every talk on AI. I would start with, here's a chatbot, log in, start giving it names of your students. But one thing I love to point out is the NCTM yearbook from 1984 was on computers and mathematics education. The NCTM yearbook from 1991 was on discrete math across the curriculum. There were fantastic ideas about modern mathematics, several decades ago. And I would love to see computing and ideas about machine learning and AI start to make their way into mathematics classrooms.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And that concludes this debate. To say you've given us something to think about is an understatement. I learned a lot and I've been thinking a lot about AI since we started this conversation.
Now it's up to our listeners. Take a moment, ponder these arguments. Please share it with your friends. There is so much here. Share with your colleagues. Share with your administration. Like, this is a conversation that needs to be had. And let us know what resonated with you. Be sure to follow us on Blue Sky at Debate Math Pod, or, and this is brand new, you can text us your thoughts on this debate. Check out the show notes. What made you think the most?
Again, huge thanks to our three guests. Thank you for your thoughtful debate. You really took things seriously, but in a very respectful, thoughtful way. We love seeing adults disagree and lean into disagreement.
And thanks to all those who are listening. We hope you learned and enjoyed this.
So as we wrap up, Ed, where can listeners find you and learn more about you and your work?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. I share probably more on Instagram than anything else. Facebook too, with Ed Campos Jr., my personal, and then my nonprofit Campo Creativo 559 on Instagram. Share some of the work I'm doing in the community. So excited to connect, and I'll share the links to those profiles in the show notes.
And Cal, where can listeners find you?
Pretty much the same place. LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Mastodon, that Twitter X place. Yeah, anywhere. If you're around Toronto, just come by, say hi.
And Jed, where can listeners find you?
Don't just leave me alone. No, I'm on Blue Sky.
And we'll put all that in the show notes. And that's all from us today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Want to learn more about incorporating debate activities into your math classroom? Go to luzniak.com/podcast to sign up for my mailing list, learn more about debate math, and connect with resources you could use in your classroom today. That's luzniak.com/podcast.
Feel free to reach out to us with comments and questions on debatemath.com, or follow us on social media at debatemath or at debatemathpod on Twitter.
And don't forget that you can text us with your thoughts on any of the debates too.
You can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts,
or wherever you listen to this podcast. Your feedback is super important to us. Well, that's all from us.
Looking forward to debating with you next episode. Until next time, cheers.